This is the morning brief from the Economic Times.
The birthplace of the Green Revolution is now under siege, bleeding out bad, as its youth snorts, sniffs, shoots and sings about sex, drugs, booze, and gangs in a hoodie and thick gold jewelry.
ਖੇਡਣਗੇ ਜੱਟ ਅੱਜ ਖੂਨ ਦੀਆਂ ਹੋਲੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਕਰ ਦਿਓ ਅੱਜ ਮਾਰ ਮਾਰ ਗੋਲੀਆਂ ਚੱਕ ਲਓ ਰਿਵਾਲਵਰ ਰਫਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਕਬਜ਼ਾ ਲੈਣਾ ਏ ਉਹ ਲੱਗ ਚਿੱਟਾ ਦੇ ਰਾਮੇ ਨੂੰ ਆਉਣਾ ਯਾਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਲੋਕ ਬੱਕਰੇ ਬਣਾਉਣਾ ਸ਼ੇਰਾਂ ਦਾ ਸ਼ਿਕਾਰ ਕਰਕੇ ਦਿਖਾਉਣਾ ਵੀ ਕਰਕੇ ਦਿਖਾਉਣਾ ਮਿੱਤਰਾਂ ਲੋਕ ਗੋਲੀਆਂ ਚਲਾਉਣਾ ਵੀ ਗੋਲੀਆਂ ਚਲਾਉਣਾ ਵੀ ਗੋਲੀਆਂ ਚਲਾਉਣਾ ਮਿੱਤਰਾਂ ਲੋਕ ਗੋਲੀਆਂ ਚਲਾਉਣਾ ਵੀ ਗੋਲੀਆਂ ਚਲਾਉਣਾ ਵੀ ਗੋਲੀਆਂ ਚਲਾਉਣਾ
Punjab, the land of the five rivers, may have just 2% of the country's population, 10% of the total gun licenses. In absolute terms, that means close to 4 lakh active licensed weapons in the state, as per data released by Punjab's Chief Electoral Officer this January. Here's another startling data set. Out of its 2 crore population, based on the 2011 census, there were more than 2 lakh drug dependents in Punjab. In other words, 1.2% of the adult population is addicted to drugs, said an older 2015 study on opioids done by AIMS and NGO Society for Promotion of Youth and Masses. And when it came to active users, the survey estimated the number to be a staggering 8.6 lakhs.
While India is considered to be a rich country because of its youth population and the youngest population in the world, Punjab is showing the other side of this demographics, the glut that can plague the younger population, and that is drugs. Walking through the by-lanes in Punjab, every second house that you enter would at least have one addict, and that is taking away from the shine of this otherwise considered rich state.
Such cold statistics perhaps throw some light and context on the brutal shooting of Congress leader and iconic 28-year-old Punjabi singer Shubhdeep Singh, also known as Sidhu Moosewala, last Sunday while driving his SUV. However savage and sad such assassinations are, this is the state of the state today, where reeling a gun is machismo, pushing heroin in your bloodstream is part of a brotherhood.
Firing on Punjabi singer Shubhdeep Sidhu Moosewala near Jawahar village of Mansa.
Protests have broken out as his fans and supporters have gathered in the civil hospital protesting and demanding that the attackers be identified as soon as possible.
Canada-based gangster Goldie Brar, a close aide of gang leader Lawrence Bishnoi, claimed responsibility for the murder in a Facebook post yesterday evening.
It's Friday, 3rd of June. From the Economic Times, I'm your host, Arijit Barman, and you're listening to Punjab's Guns, Gangs and Gore on the Morning Brief. But how did the state, and more importantly, its music, abandon its folksy, Sufi, or even Bhakti roots to take up vodka, cocaine, and AK-47? From Jugni to empowering women, why has Punjab's pop songs become so sexualized, violent, and misogynistic? We ask one of Bollywood's best creative minds and director, and a former sociology professor to demystify the phenomenon for us.
The gangland and the music industry and the politics of the state, I mean, it's all become one hot mess.
The culture of Punjab was always militant, but in a very different sense.
Punjab has one of the highest numbers of licensed weapons in the country.
What we are imbibing is a culture of violence.
It's a perfect storm with a mix of the wealth and the residual resentment.
Violence happens openly in public spaces, but the state is silent.
Abhishek Chaubey's 2016 film Udta Punjab exposed this underbelly where a rock star, a migrant laborer, a doctor, and a policeman found themselves struggling with their demons in the backdrop of a raging drug crisis in the state. Sadly, what was true then is still the truth in 2022.
It has got to do, this problem has got to do with the injection of wealth in Punjabi society that has happened, in the last. I mean, Punjab is comparatively, relatively speaking to the rest of the country, is one of the most prosperous states. It did really well even during the Raj, and there was wealth coming in. And then we all know about the history of Punjab, which went through a terrible period in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. With all the insurgency and all of that, and Khalistan movement and all of that, and it's a perfect storm with a mix of the wealth and the residual resentment after the sort of the violence that stopped, in the 90s, late 90s, when the violence stopped. Although, I mean, the violence is abated, thankfully, but not all issues are resolved, and a lot of the young generation or the generation, people born in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, I mean, they have grown up with stories of violence committed upon them, and their own people committed violence on other people. I mean, they've grown up with stories of violence about and violence became a sort of unfortunately, so it's been a part of the folklore, the stories. Some of the role models in the societies are extremely violent people. And there was an injection of wealth in society wherein people from rural areas, the common hardworking folk, got the opportunity to sell a lot of land and make a lot of money. That's something that's happened in Haryana as well. Although the wealth came in, but the genteel sophistication that comes with wealth over a period of time has not. And Punjabi music, I mean, Punjab, the culture as far as their music is concerned, especially, I mean, it's very unique in the sense that they take great pride in it. A lot of these youngsters, they look up to, I mean, they see music and the stardom that comes with music as a way to sort of, what are they going to do with all the money that they have? So, I mean, they see it as one way of sort of making sense of their lives, and they sing what they know about,
Even Professor Rajesh Gill, a former sociology professor at the Punjab University, admits guns today are symbols of power, status, and a money can buy me anything attitude.
Owning guns and possessing guns and being aggressive is a characteristic of not only the youth, but also the political leaders, the people who are very influential, and people who matter, who are powerful. So therefore, wielding guns symbolizes power. Wielding guns symbolizes masculinity. And wielding guns, symbolizes domination. So therefore, it is patriarchal, it is masculine, it is machoism, and it is, being powerful, a symbol of power. So therefore, the youth is doing what their elders have taught them. So I would like to extend this to the total society. We are all responsible for this.
Even Moosewala's own music uses foul language, promotes gun culture. 2 of his viral videos show him training using an AK-47 assault rifles. And he himself has been booked under the Arms Act on 2 counts in 2020.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be ਹੋਣਾ ਪਿਆ ਜੱਟਦਾ I'm a brown boy ਗੱਭਰੂ ਨੂੰ ਮੰਨ ਜਾਣਾ ਮੰਨ ਯੱਲੜੇ ਅੱਖ ਬਾਰਾਂਗੇ ਜੀ ਸ਼ੌਟ ਗਨ ਯੱਲੜੇ ਦਿਲਾਂ ਤੇ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨੇ ਸਿੱਧੇ ਮਾਰਦੀ ਆ ਦਿਲਾਂ ਤੇ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨੇ ਸਿੱਧੇ ਮਾਰਦੀ ਆਓ ਸਿੱਧ ਕੀ ਪੂਰੀ ਠੋਕ ਠੋਕ ਰੱਖਦਾ ਡੇਂਜਰ ਤੇ ਜਾਨ ਲੈਵਾ ਸ਼ੌਂਕ ਰੱਖਦਾ ਦੂਰੀ ਫੁੱਟ ਦੀ ਬਣਾ ਕੇ ਐ ਮੰਡੀਰ ਖੜਦੀ ਡੱਬ ਵਿੱਚ ਭਰ ਕੇ ਗਲਾਉਕ ਰੱਖਦਾ
But along with patriarchy and its toxic bruteness, paradoxically, even in the Sikh society, casteism has raised its ugly head.
The people of Punjab, the culture of Punjab gradually has grown both in terms of patriarchy as well as casteism, which is very strange, which I, as a sociologist, would call hypocritic, because in theory, we glorify the theology of Sikhism, for instance, equality, kirat, and kirat karna, vand chakna. And on the other hand, we are so casteist. Why do we have to paint my caste on the windscreen of my car? Why do I have to always flaunt my caste like anything? Therefore, this machoism, this patriarchy is definitely associated with Jat Sikh culture, particularly the agriculture. And I wonder, why is it so? Because nobody wants to pursue agriculture now. The younger, the youth, the Jat youth of Punjab, they're not interested in pursuing agriculture. Everybody is trying to move out of Punjab to the West, Canada, or to Australia, or to UK or US. But it is very paradoxical that you are eulogizing your own caste, you are eulogizing the militancy in a very different form. Punjab has been militant, but in a very different way.
Just like elsewhere in the country, the young and the restless of Punjab are increasingly shunning traditional jobs like farming and instead seeking out an escape route to Canada. And that, in turn, has some deadly ramifications that is playing out even in their music and minds.
We have known since the 90s, for the last 20, 30 years, there have been various notorious Punjabi gangsters in Canada, like Bindi Johal, and there are other gangs like Brothers Keepers Gang and whatnot. And these are notorious gangs. They're dealing in drugs, and they're also, to some extent, involved in the politics. The separatist politics. That is there. That still rears its head from time to time in Punjab. I think it is my guess that to a great extent, this really ultra-violent sort of music and talking about drugs and guns and girls and cars. I mean, a lot of it. I mean, even some of the more gentler Punjabi musicians who do not talk about guns and drugs, but they do talk about fast cars and hot girls. Which is your standard hip hop music. I mean, which is standard everyday hip hop music. So I think there has been definitely a huge amount of influence from the West to the Punjabi music. I mean, the violence of the 80s and the 90s awaited in Punjab, but it brought in a culture, where it was okay to talk about guns, where the role models were violent people. And with this influence of the West and the hip hop music in the West, it became a perfect storm, where you have that sort of music which is so popular and the young kids are thriving on it.
Much like the character of Tommy Singh. Remember him from Abhishek's movie Udta Punjab?
So Tommy was this guy, was born and was raised in Punjab till he was in his very early teens. And then went to, in my head, I mean, although we've not talked about it clearly, but in my head, in Sudeep's head, he went to Birmingham because of family connections. And that's where he was a talented musician to begin with. But when he went to But like Diljit Dosanjh and all of these guys, they were first singing in the gurudwaras. I mean, with the ragis, and then Tommy Singh went west, went to Birmingham, and sort of got into the whole Asian underground culture. That's what we were focusing on in Udta, rather than more the hip hop variety of music. I mean, in our heads, he's not just popular in Indian Punjab; he's also popular amongst the Punjabi diaspora in UK, Canada, and all of that. And he sings. I mean, there are two things here. I mean, he sings about Chitta because that's what he knows. You know, that's his range of experience. These are young kids, and it's not that. I mean, they this is all they know about life. I mean, there is no great insight. But what they know about is having a good time and snorting some drugs. And of course, it captures the imagination of kids, where in the world of Udta Punjab, what I wanted to show was that where drugs have become very commonplace. I mean, it's become easier to find pudia of heroin. And the thing that we also wanted to do is that we wanted to bring a moment in the film where he is sitting across these youngsters in a prison cell, and they tell him how they love his music and they're big fans, and then he gets to know what they have really done. And and I wanted to bring that moment of clarity, that sort of epiphany that Tommy Singh has. And then when he moves on from there, I mean, then he's singing Batalvi.
Oddly enough, even today, different people react differently to the menace, from outright denial to sheer despair.
The thing that I found as surprising, I mean, while certain regions of Punjab, and Punjab has various Majha, Doab, all of these regions, that is certain regions of Punjab, I found the drug abuse much more rampant than some other areas. As far as the people, sort of the older generation reacting to what is going on the ground, I mean, their reactions were as expected as they would be anywhere else, ranging from complete, when I was talking to them, complete sympathy with our project and complete admission of things going seriously wrong, to complete denial. you know अपने लड़के ऐसे नहीं कर सकते, our boys are not like this. There's also this understanding. I mean, we met a few people who had suffered, had lost somebody in the family because of the drug crisis. And what really affected us was, I mean, we tend to think, what is unique about the Punjab problem, the drug problem back then when I saw it, was that I had not seen drug abuse so rampant in really rural areas. And you would see these houses completely destroyed because of this, So, so that was quite terrible. But yes, there was a lot of denial also. I mean, but at the same time, the one thing that did happen, a few things that did happen, like Sudeep, who had spent much more time than I had, in fact, in Punjab, and he called. He called me a few days after the film came out, because we had gone through a terrible release, and we were just relieved that the film was out there. And he got a call from this lady who actually had nothing to do with the film world, but she somehow managed to, through somebody, get Sudeep's number, and she called him and she thanked him for the film, because she had lost two of her boys, to this.
But honestly, aren't we becoming more violent every day around the world? Look at the gun culture and mass shooting that keeps repeating itself in US schools.
This aggression, this violence which we talk about, whether it is violent conversations or violent behavior that we are indulging into, is very much accepted, and we've got a huge appetite for this. For instance, when violence happens openly in public spaces, and there are protests against it, but the state is silent, nobody does anything, people have to swallow it, and it becomes very difficult. When there is a movement encouraging hatred, inducing hatred, whether on religion basis or on the basis of caste or gender or language or any other regionalism, when such narratives are circulated all over, violence is bound to come. And people, become more tolerant towards violence. All over the world, not only in India, we are seeing much more violence in media. Even the cartoon films, even the films, which we expose our children to, small kids to. I am also shocked to see the huge fan club of the singers who carry weapons and sing, whose music is full of guns and weapons. But they've got a huge fanship. So therefore, something terrible has happened, not only with the youth, not only with the Sikh youth, not only with the Punjabis, but all over. And this is a very, very worrying trend.
What Punjab is dealing with today, the African American beatboxers or street rappers of Brooklyn or Harlem or Queens have been preaching ever since the 70s and 80s. The murders of Tupac Shakur and Notorious B.I.G., allegedly gang wars and revenge killings, remain unsolved even today.
Hey, yo, Biggie!
The rap world's biggest star was murdered last night.
Some suspect the shooting of the Notorious B.I.G. is retaliation for last year's murder of Tupac Shakur.
And how can we forget even rock was once labeled as devil's music? So let's take a world tour with my colleague and ET's editor views, Indrajit Hazra, for some global perspective.
What happens in not only sort of hip hop, but music in general, but it channelizes sort of repressed, there's a lot of repression which comes out in music, especially lyrics. Obviously, there is a reason why they call it ghetto music also. I mean, the ghetto doesn't only exist in, let's say, Queens or Harlem in New York. We just don't call it ghettos. We just call it other sort of identity markers here. And Punjab, as you know, I mean, it has its own sort of built up problems, whether it's drugs, whether it's guns, etc. The other context would be like a lot of people would find, even the music of Gully Boy, for that matter, quite non-national.
And their lyrics have become an extension of their lives.
Essentially, you're hearing what they see, as it were. But at the same time, in a country like ours, their very set notion of what art or culture should be or is. And again, I come back to the rather overused word subculture, which I think is a little bit of a euphemism. It's actually just another culture. I mean, essentially, subculture makes it sound as if it's something happening kind of underground in a basement, but it's not. I mean, for instance, Punjab has a drug problem, whether you like it or not. It's not only about, for that matter, I mean, even if you listen to Moosewala's songs, you're going to get some kind of idea. I mean, it's mirroring it. It's not the cause or the effect, but it's mirroring, for instance, certain things which we saw in the farmer agitation. It's not a 1:1 correlation. Obviously, it's the same that goes with any art form. It's like saying, did they really have to sing about guns? It's the wrong end of the stick if one asks questions like that. Essentially, I think Moosewala's, as you said, ecosystem is there. And instead of sort of taking a usually escapist route, and escapism has its own functions, but I think the beauty of people like Tupac or Moosewala or the Pistols or so many others, and I'm not only talking about music, is that they find it completely natural to talk about this. They don't find it exceptional. It's actually the world they come from.
But what many still find problematic is even when these artists leave that world of poverty and crime and become superstars of Beverly Hills and lead a millionaire's life with all its blings attached, they still seem to be writing about that world, failing to extricate themselves from their past. But fans insist, after the socio-economic falls away, it's all about being real and relatable.
A fat man can call a fat man a fat man. It's essentially that, it's there. So if you move out of, let's say, a neighborhood or a city or a country, that doesn't mean that that place stops existing for you. In fact, I would say sometimes if you're successful, that gives you a certain kind of sort of street cred or attraction. But the point is, being successful ultimately, or being rich, which is a subset of success, doesn't make you stop. So in the case of hip hop, whether it's about guns, whether it's about Afro-Americans in America having a kind of understanding that they are second-class citizens, or for that matter, the working class in Thatcherite Britain during the punk movement.
My take. I know you will argue being subversive is second nature to rock stars. Music genres like grunge, as Indrajit pointed out, come custom fit with the idea that it's representative of angst. Even in benign country music, you do have people like Johnny Cash. Hip-hop, on the other hand, comes retrofitted with subversion, just like punk rock during the Margaret Thatcher regime in the UK of the late 70s and 80s. But what we are seeing in Punjab is quite different. Guns figure much more prominently in the politics and culture of Punjab than any other state in India. And with unemployment, a doped-out generation, Punjab's toxic gun culture will only get more deeply entrenched. Its violence will get even more legitimized. In 2001, Punjabi singer Babu Maan sang Kabza, appealing to the youth to pick up the revolver and settle land disputes. But often it backfires on the artists themselves, as several of them have been shot, wounded, and even killed by the same trigger-happy gun culture they seem to be championing themselves. Several others have been on the receiving end of extortion calls, much like Bollywood of the 1990s. Believe me, there is no romance in violence or vigilante justice. Unless the volatile border state of Punjab cracks down on these societal menace, there will be many more such bloodsheds and untimely deaths like Moosewala's. You have been listening to Punjab's Guns, Gangs and Gore on The Morning Brief with me, your host, Arijit Barman. Producers for the episode, Surbhi Modi from ET and Swati Joshi from Awaz. Sound editors Indranil Bhattacharjee and Rajesh Nayak from ET and Varun Kapahi from Awaz. Executive producer, yours truly. The Morning Brief airs every Tuesday, Thursdays and Friday. If you like this episode, please make sure to share it on your social media. Thank you for listening and have a great weekend. Goodbye. Good luck. All clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits mentioned in the description.